I made a video about a month ago now, I think it was, on the subject of suicide. It was a by request video. And since that time it has been on my mind to make a follow-up because I find that I have some more things that I want to talk about on this subject. That I have a whole new vector to bring to the discussion. And it sort of happened as I started to recollect things that I had read and learned from a book called The Lucifer Principle by Howard Bloom. Now that's not an occult book, that's actually a science book with a bit of a dramatic title. But it's really about the idea of man as an animal and each person as part of a social superorganism. And so just hold that thought. Now I do come from the perspective that man is just an animal, that he's not special in a way that a dog is not special, if you know what I mean. He's just like a dog, only more intelligent. But could you ever imagine a dog saying to itself, you know, I've just had enough, and it just deliberately launches itself off the edge of a cliff or off a bridge and falls to its death on purpose? You could never imagine that. And yet human beings have done this kind of thing. So this suicidal impulse seems to be something peculiar to our species, possibly just as a result of how complex our social structure is. I'm not really sure. But just like, you know, the rest of the animal kingdom, the most powerful drive, the most powerful instinct that we have is our own self-preservation and survival. So it takes a lot to destroy that. I mean, if your survival is threatened, most people, I think, would steal and would lie, and in some instances maybe even would kill to protect their own survival. So it's a very, very powerful drive, and yet with some people, something has happened inside themselves that just switches off and they choose to kill themselves. So if we think about this idea of a social superorganism, I'm not sure I'm completely sold on that idea, but I think it has some merit. And what I'm getting at is, if you imagine yourself like a cell within a larger organism, and if your life circumstances render you surplus to requirements of the larger organism, then perhaps the mind turns against itself and causes you to wish to commit suicide. Now this made me think of something in my own life where several years ago, it was around Christmas. Now I'm a single man, I live alone, I don't have a family around me. And this happened about 6 months after my mother died. So it was around Christmas time. My best friend, one of my best friends was sick. My other best friend was over in America visiting his girlfriend. I'm not the sort of person who does a lot of things socially. I only have few friends, but close friends. And I had chosen to move house, live across the other end of town where I was away from people that I would normally call around to see. So this Christmas time, I was off for 2 weeks, and throughout those 2 weeks, circumstances conspired against me that I hardly saw anyone. I was in the house most of the time. I went for walks on my own, and the only people I saw were when I went out to the shop to do a little shopping, and that was really only a 2-minute conversation to hand money over. So after several days of this, it started to play on my mind, and I started to get quite depressed. So just imagine that a situation like that is ongoing. Now I was looking forward to getting back to work, because there's a certain social aspect of work that relieves that side of things. So I was looking forward to that. But imagine I didn't have that to look forward to. Imagine I was sitting there with no friends, no possibility of future relationships. Well, I mean, life's what you make it, of course, but let's say I was very, very isolated from people and it was going to just go on indefinitely. Well, that seems to evoke some kind of self-destruct impulse. A sense of depression that, if allowed to continue, would deepen and perhaps eventually cause you to wish to die. So maybe that was, my own subconscious's way of starting to self-destruct. But obviously, it didn't happen because my situation changed. You see what I'm getting at? It's like the super organism decided that you were doing something that was no longer required by the full organism. Therefore, you're surplus to requirements, and therefore you should kill yourself. So I do think this idea has some merit, purely because, it's borne out by human experience. I mean, I've often thought that if my writing ever became really successful and I got a publishing contract and I was able to leave my job and I became a full-time author, something in me tells me that just wouldn't be the thing to do. Because all that would do is make me spend more and more time alone. You know what I'm saying? So, if anyone feels the suicidal impulse, I think the real answer to it is you've got to change your circumstances. You've got to figure out where the depression is coming from, and you've got to change what's happening in your life in order to reintegrate yourself. I mean, I think a lot of the good, healthy feelings and positive emotions that I have are really a result of what I contribute to, the larger human society around me. Even if it's just making YouTube videos, or as I do, writing essays and writing books, seeing people, interacting with people, affecting other people's lives, pursuing ambitions. It's kind of a tricky balance for someone like me, because I'm an individualist, which means you're kind of voluntarily exiling yourself from the zeitgeist, if you know what I mean, from the spirit of the age. You're standing alone with a different value system than most people around you. You tend to look at the world around you as being a little bit mad, whereas you think of yourself as one of the very few sane people. So, and then of course you get ostracized by people who represent the norms. So, it's kind of a tricky balance, but you've got to feel connected to the rest of the human race. Because if you don't, it seems to evoke these self-destructive impulses. So, just something to think about.